Hello, my name is Alexa. I'm a 3D artist and designer. Also, for the past 4 years, director at XK, which is a studio I co-founded in London. And despite now London being my home, I'm from a place called Iași in Romania. I grew up there in the 90s, and I think there was a degree of monotony to like an Eastern European city in the 90s. There was a routine and a slight coldness to my surroundings, and I think that had a big influence on the fact that I craved to create something else, something new, something different and more surreal. And I was able to do that with getting a camera and photography and going out with my friends, taking photos, but then not really settling with them, bringing them in, start tinkering with software and manipulate those images to arrive at this more hyperreal and imagined reality that I was craving. And that triggered this passion for visual image making and animation and working with sound and creating this harmony between your image, your sound and motion and color. And yeah, once I discovered 3D, which was quite a few years ago, I've been hooked and I've been working with that medium since. And my process is very much about looking at the objects and the world around me, or find stories that intrigue and fascinate me, and then reinterpret them, abstract and experiment with them to arrive at something new, something that feels familiar, but at the same time it doesn't. It makes you question what you're looking at. It's familiar because it has that tactility of something that you might see in the real world, but then it's almost turned upside down, and something is slightly off there. And that's sort of the reaction that I try to instill with my work. It's primarily self-taught, just YouTube, online tutorials, manuals, a lot of trial and error. I used to be subscribed to 3D World magazine back in the day. I'm not even sure if that's still around. But the beauty about 3D is that all the information is at your disposal. And also the industry and just the technology moves so quickly that there's always a feel that you have something new to learn. So this learning doesn't really stop. But I would say that for me, what was more important, apart from learning the 3D tools, is the techniques. Because software and renderers, they come and go. But the techniques is what truly almost takes you through your entire career. And even though you might seem that they're outdated, they still almost like add up. And yeah, I would say a focus on the technique and not only looking at the 3D world for that learning. For example, lighting. You can learn so much from photography, or how would a photographer light their scenes, the softboxes and techniques that they use. Or when it comes to animation, I think principles of motion, the pace, the rhythm, it's so easily transferable from 2D to 3D. Perhaps when it comes to visual effects and simulation, it is slightly more specific to the software, but having all that prior understanding definitely helps. So It depends. It depends if the project is through an agency or directly with client. Because if it's through an agency, then the relationship the agency has with a company can influence very much how the project goes. But if it is direct with the clients, I think the size of the company doesn't matter as much as the importance of that project for the company and how big or small the team that's responsible for that project is within the company. And generally speaking, the smaller the team, the more efficient things are, and the smoother the project goes. Also, it depends on the creative itself. If we are brought on board to almost explain how a product works, things can be a bit more rigid because it is quite objective. Like the message that you're trying to convey needs to be like very, very clear. While on the other hand, when the creative is more about telling a story in a slightly more poetic way, and the companies, they come to us more for our own take on a subject, and that comes with freedom to express our own visual language. The experiences tend to be quite smooth and lovely. And for example, the commission that we did with Apple for the we were commissioned to create a digital bloom artwork, and the process itself was, I think, one of my favorites because they really trusted us and came to us for the prior work that we've done, and there wasn't much input from their side, which, yeah, I think it was really amazing experience. We're generally on the lookout for people that have a good mix of design and technical skills because we are quite small. Most 3D artists are generalists, even though they do have a thing that they really excel at. People are usually comfortable to be involved in all stages of the process. And also people that have this desire to problem solve and be quite like independent and curious. I would say these are the traits. And yeah, apart from the fact of having that combined with like really nice personality, because I think that's something quite important for us, that there is a degree of like humbleness and yeah, just like really lovely attitude, because it's more important at the end of the day than your skills. It comes, yeah, it's a combination of the personality and the skills, and this like desire to constantly improve yourself, and do that while being a nice person. It depends if the project is commercial or self-initiated. I think if it is with a client, before the project starts, I would try to see what they've done before. Will they fit with our sort of visual language? But yeah, once the project is definitely going ahead, I would consider almost like the main intent of the film. What is that final message that we need to be conveyed, and what really matters, and really understand their need, which then will allow me to almost create this framework, these pillars that are almost non-negotiable, because our approach is so it is very much research driven, and we do like to push things and have a very explorative approach. But of course, when you're working with a client, they will want to have some idea, some very clear idea of what you're trying to do. So there's always this mix of setting out what's non-negotiable versus what's negotiable, and creating a framework within which we can be quite explorative within, and also identifying what the challenge is for that project. Is it a creative challenge? Are we dealing with abstracting a subject that hasn't been abstracted before? Is it a technical challenge? So just identifying where things might be difficult later on and seeing that in advance, and trying to plan ahead. If it's a film, are we talking about separate shots that allows you to get away with quite a few things technically, or is it something that has to seamlessly flow from one shot to another? So it's a combination of where the trick might be, and account for that early on. I think the difference in opinion, it's most of the time on how we would go to execute the idea, and not so much the final intention and the final message that needs to be conveyed, because ultimately that's not something that you can argue with. There is a message that they're trying to get across, so we're all trying to arrive at that. So I think understanding what the ask is, and understanding what really matters to them as a final outcome, and then perhaps propose alternative methods on how to get there, which maybe is where your expertise and opinion is definitely more appreciated, as long as the final message is conveyed, I would say. But at the end of the day, yes, you are dealing with a lot of forces and opinions, so there is a level of compromise. It's just finding that middle ground where the brief is almost met, but at the same time you've done it in a way that it does satisfy your own creative desire. I think one of the most important projects, well, typically the most important projects are the self-initiated ones. All the time they will always have a special place in my heart, and especially the early ones. For example, the very first film that me and Lucas, who I co-founded XK with, that project seemed to have still very much a big influence on the work we do today, even though at that time we never really created it with this intention. We just did something because we were curious about exploring certain alien flora and bring all of this strange behavior and like natural phenomena that we were fascinated with at that time. We just wanted to bring that to life and just see what we would come up with. And it turns out that project, even though it's 6 years old, it's still being referenced on briefs and boards that we get nowadays, and it has definitely had a big influence on the amount of flower projects that we do, and I think in a way it's good to do something out of just your own heart, and put that out there like we did, not expecting much from it. But a lot of the time, like, the industry works in a very straightforward way. You will be almost asked to create something you've done prior. So yeah, I think putting work out there that truly resonates with you, in return will almost keep that work almost in that kind of project going. I think the self-initiated projects, they have had a big influence on the work I do nowadays. So that balance has always been important, because with commercial work, you are at the hand of so many forces and constraints almost. So it's quite hard for you to truly like create 100% what you set out at the start. You can sometimes get very close, but it's never, there's always some sort of compromise. So that's where having that time away to explore things that truly matter to you and exactly the way you want them, I think it's crucial. But at the same time, there has to be a balance, because like me personally, I do like having time constraints and all of these parameters that you can work within. Otherwise, I would be creating, I would never finish. Like the personal project can always be improved. So I think it's good to have a mix of both, and ideally get into a spot where your commercial work or your commissions do feel like personal work, and that's usually what we strive to get at. I think working more with music and like long form would be interesting, because for a long time, well, growing up, I thought I will be a music video director, because just by listening to certain songs, the images would almost materialize in my head. And a lot of the projects that we do nowadays, we create the visuals and then sound comes after. And I would like to explore more the other way around, where you are given a track that you can then bring to life and create something that's a longer piece as well, that's not maximum 30 seconds long. Also working with bringing that work into a bigger screen. Very recently we created a music video for a very talented artist and friend of ours, and we were able to display that work on much bigger screen in the center of London and just bring people there and see their reaction. And I think working so much with like the small screen and creating things just for your phone, I think it doesn't have the same impact. So ideally, yeah, working with creating more of a virtual environment that then people can be immersed in is something that we want to explore more in the future, and interactivity and taking it away from something that you just passively look at to completely being immersed in. I would say that not overthink too much. Don't try to think too far ahead, and just take things as they come, and almost look at the present moment and see what's the next step that you can do in that moment. Even though your ideal dream or aspiration might seem very, very a long way ahead, keep sort of looking at the proximity and see what is that step you could do in the moment, and then eventually those steps will compound to get to your kind of ideal project or position. Because doesn't feel like there's a shortcut to this world. It is a series of multiple decisions and steps, but I think having this this attitude of kind of, I think for us what worked really well is this design by doing, and not really chasing a certain outcome, but try to enjoy the present moment and the process itself. I think it's fascinating to see how much AI has expanded people's imagination. I think people are definitely more open to this like dreamy and surreal type of work, and we definitely fully embraced its power to fast track our ideas and speed up the creative process. But we don't really see the results, or at the moment we don't really see the results from AI as our final output, but it's more of a companion, more of a creative companion that you can have. And I do like the fact that now you can train AI on your past work and just see how you would reimagine it, and how you would almost reinterpret it. And I think this ultimately gives you a bit more control over the tool. And yeah, I think it's very useful. I think I look forward to it speeding up certain workflows. I never really saw it as something negative. It was on my mind. I mean, I did notice it even from university years. I would look around. There's just not many women almost choosing this path, and then joining the industry. Same story there. But it wasn't something that I had like very strongly on my mind, because I was just so focused on trying to get better, trying to enjoy the process, and I was just very, very happy to be doing something that I loved, and be surrounded by people that also love that. But I think having this nice experience that I had, where it didn't feel like something negative, it's to do with the fact that I was in quite a small team, and everybody was just extremely lovely. But I am aware that my experience would have been quite different if I would have joined a slightly bigger company, starting out with more layers, more hierarchies, where your voice might be trickier to be heard. But I think since I started, the industry has like truly blossomed in that regard. It's a lot more varied now. With the London scene alone, I think things are just way, way better. There is definitely a new wave of designers, artists, and animators who come from all sorts of backgrounds, and I look forward to see that propagate to like more directorial positions and technical positions, because I think things are much better now on like a designer level. It's just that it takes time to see that effect almost propagate. Keep it up, keep it up. I think it's beautiful to see events like this happen and be part of them, because a lot of our time is spent behind computers and tinkering with pushing pixels around. So being able to get out of that and come here, meet so many like creatives and like-minded individuals, it really makes what you're doing feel worthwhile. And yeah, I would say it's amazing, and I'm really grateful for festivals like these.